Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Gyung, Professor, Nursing Department of Sean University. My paper's subject is Effect of Self-Directed Learning Ability and Self-Leadership to one Clinical Practice Competence among Nursing Students. Let me introduce my studies introduction. Nursing education is aimed at producing qualified nurses who would give the high-quality nursing care, meeting the needs of patients in clinical practice. With advanced techniques of medical treatment and a high demand for medical service, the critical practice competence of nurses has been of great importance. Accordingly, the Korea accreditations, the Board of Nursing Education has regarded nurses' clinical practice competence as important in assessing the running and performance of nursing education program. However, the reality is that having experienced the transitions from university to clinical practice, many graduate nurses still needed considerable amount of time and effort to complete practice training due to a lack of clinical practice competence. Clinical practice competence is defined as the ability to provide patients with appropriate nursing care in conjunction with corresponding knowledge, techniques, in clinical practice to satisfy each patient needs. Nursing students are trained to develop the clinical practice competence by experiencing a wide range of clinical settings and learning the role as a nurse and nursing skill during clinical practice training session. In general, nurses with a high level of clinical practice competence can effectively carry out the nursing task, thereby enhance the quality of nursing care and service. The higher the level of clinical practice competence, the higher the level of nursing professionalism. The high level of nursing professionalism indicates a rapid, proper adaptations to different clinical settings, leading to the reduced turnover rate. Therefore, in order to raise the adaptability of new nurses in clinical practice, it is necessary to develop a appropriate training program designed to enhance nursing student clinical practice competence in the curricular at College of Nursing, and to analyze the relevant influencing factors. Furthermore, it is also necessary to assess each nursing student's learning capability and to develop the various teaching methods based on assessment result. Given that a nursing student clinical practice competence can be improved through the combinations of multiple learning courses, such as nursing theories, nursing skill, and clinical practice training. It has been reported that learning outcomes are better when the learners have an active learning attitude than when they take on a passive attitude. Also, other reports have shown that a positive image of nurses that nursing students have during clinical practice training sessions can instill pride into their mind and induce self-directed learning. The self-directed learning ability is defined as a learner's ability to take the initiative in recognizing the necessity of learning, identifying and securing necessary resources, setting a learning goal, and evaluating learning outcome. Some studies they have found that during training session, nursing students with self-directed learning ability are highly likely to clearly understand one needs, set up a goal, and actively involve themselves in the training process. In other words, the higher the self-directed learning ability, the higher the clinical practice competence. Self-directed learning ability enables nurses to actively cope with the rapid change in clinical setting and acquire the knowledge, skill, and the attitudes appropriate for professional nursing. In this regard, it has been reported that as an important nursing capability that needs to be developed in the curriculum. Self-directed learning ability is a factor influencing clinical practice competence. Another factor that has been reported to have a positive effect on clinical practice competence is self-leadership. Self-leadership is defined as the ability to motivate and influence oneself to carry out a given task. Generally, individuals with a high level of self-leadership are able to control themselves in an autonomous and responsible manner, reward themselves for their own desirable behavior, and motivate themselves to produce a more innovative and creative outcome. In this sense, self-leadership is a personal quality that is considered essential for nurses who need to quickly respond and show leadership, depending on patients' conditions. According to previous studies related to the clinical practice competence of nursing college students, the facts influencing clinical practice competence are as follows: self-leadership, adversity quotient profile, clinical practice satisfaction, nurse professionalism, self-directed learning, problem-solved abilities, the critical thinking, and the communication style. However, self-directed learning and self-leadership have not been studied together as factors influencing clinical practice competence. Thus, this study is intended to analyze the relationships of nursing college students to self-directed learning, self-leadership, and the clinical practice competence, and then serve as the basic data in developing academic training program effective for enhanced of clinical practice competence. Next is the study's object. The object of this study is to analyze the relationships of the nurses student self-directed learning ability, self-leadership, and the clinical practice competence, and to define the factors influencing clinical practice competence. Next, let me introduce the methodology of my study. First, design. This study is a descriptive survey study to analyze the relationships of self-directed learning ability, self-leadership, and the clinical practice competence of nursing students, and to define factors influencing clinical practice competence. Next, the subject. The subject of these studies were second year to fourth year students in the Department of Nursing at a university located in Jeju province. Subject and volunteers are informed of studies object, and among those who gave consent to participate, patients. Convenience sampling was applied. The sample size was calculated using chip power 3.1. Finally analyzes the 226 copies. Next, the measurement tool. First, the self-directed learning ability. The tool developed by the KEDI. Now, the tool has a total 45 questions. Consists of learning plan, learning, and learning evaluations. The Chromebase alpha of the tool was 92 in the KEDI studies. And my studies, Chromebase alpha was 0.93, and self-readers was measured using a tool developed by Hong and Neck. This tool, this tool, 35 questions. And the tool, the Chromebase alpha of the tool was 0.7 and 0.87. And in my studies, Chromebase alpha, the 0.97. And the clinical practice competence was measured using a tool developed by Lee. This tool, 45 questions composed of 5 domains: interpersonal relationship, communication and education cooperation, profession development, the nursing process, and the nursing skill. The Chromebase alpha was 0.92 in chest study, and my study 0.98. Next, data collection and analysis. Data collections, the data were collected in Jeju province from April 20 to May 19. Prior to data collections, the subjects were informed. The collected data would be used for only the purpose of research and anonymized, and anyone could voluntarily withdraw consent to participation at any time during the study. It is approximately 20 minutes for each response to complete questionnaires. The final analysis, 226 copies. Data were analyzed using SPSS Wind version 22 program. General characteristics analyzes the descriptive statistics, and the difference in self-directed learning ability in the self-leadership and the clinical practice practice competence were using t-test and ANOVA. And the correlations among three variables are using Pearson's correlations coefficients. The factor influencing clinical practice competence were analyzed as the multiple regression. Next, let me introduce my study's result. The level of self-directed learning ability, the self-leadership, the clinical practice competence of subject. A self-directed learning ability, the mean score was 3.46, and the self-leadership is 3.37, and the clinical practice competence is 3.58. The result are like this. And difference in self-directed learning ability, self-leadership, clinical practice competence of subject. Self-directed learning ability is statistically significant in the grade and the religion. And also clinical practice competence statistically significant in the grade and religion. But self-leadership was found to be not significant. As a result of post-hoc analysis, there are significant differences only in grade. Self-directed learning ability was significantly higher in senior than in sophomore. Clinical practice competence was significantly higher in senior than junior and sophomore. But the results are like this. And the correlations among three variables of subject. The result of analysis in correlations among self-directed learning ability, self-leadership, and clinical practice competence showed that self-directed learning ability and self-leadership had a significant positive correlation. And also statistically significantly positive correlation, self-directed learning ability and self-leadership. The results are like this. A factor influencing clinical practice competence of a subject like this. Regression analysis was performed to define the factors influencing clinical practice competence. As a result of analysis on self-directed learning ability, self-leadership, and grade and religions, which showed significant difference among general characteristics. As dependent variables, self-directed learning ability and self-leadership were found to have a significant effect on the clinical practice competence of nursing students. The regression model was statistically significant, and the model's explanatory power was 52.5%. The results are like this. Let me introduce my study's conclusion. This study is a descriptive study to assess the level of self-directed learning ability, self-leadership, and clinical practice competence in nursing students, and analyze the relationships of these variables and the defined factors influencing clinical practice competence. As a result of analysis on correlation between the nursing students' clinical practice competence and the other two variables, clinical practice competence had a significantly positive correlation with them. In addition, the self-directed learning ability and self-leadership were found to of factors influencing clinical practice competence. In conclusion, it is determined that the higher level of self-directed learning ability and self-leadership in nursing students contribute to the enhancement of their clinical practice competence. Based on the above result, the studies propose the following. First, the study has limitations in generalizing the result, as it targeted nursing students at a university, and it is necessary to conduct replication studies by expanding the range of region and source population. Second, training programs need to be developed to promote self-directed learning ability and self-leadership. And finally, third, subsequent studies should be conducted to demonstrate the effect of the program on enhanced self-directed learning ability and self-leadership. That's all. Thank you so much.